Keir Starmer, your goal is pretty breathtaking. You want nothing less than to end the idea that your background determines where you go in life. You say, breaking that link, that's what Labour's for. I've always felt that it runs deep for me. But it's hard, isn't it, to see that ambition as more than warm words without a revolution in resources for the state sector. Isn't the truth that it's not something that you, while promising now, will be in a position to deliver anytime soon? That's the reality, isn't it?
Look, the reality is I'm utterly committed to this. We're setting out 5 missions for government. This is one of them. So this is one of the big things that we want to change. And I'm determined that we will break that link, the pernicious link between, for children, young people, between where they start in life and where they end up. And the idea that in 2023, in the UK, the earnings of your parents determine still more where you're going to end up than your own talent is something that drives that determination in me. And that's why we set out in terms today, what are the changes that need to be made.
And I think everyone heard the ambition loudly. The point I'm trying to make to you is that it has to be evolution, not revolution, because you simply don't have the resources to deliver it fast.
Well, look,
is that fair, though?
These things will take time. I've not pretended this morning that we can snap our fingers on this. What I do know is that if we work at this over 5 years or more of the next Labour government, and we're absolutely clear that this is our priority, we can make the changes. Some of them we can start very quickly. So, for example, we need more teachers, qualified teachers in maths and science. At the moment, if you advertise in some places for a maths or science teacher, you get no applicants. So we've got to change that and get them in. And the idea of parents having children who don't have a teacher that they know needs to be in the classroom with them, that's not acceptable. We need to retain the teachers that we've got. And we need to think more about what we call Oracy, this ability to speak confidently, which we know is a massive barrier, particularly for children, young people, not just at school, but into the workplace.
But you accept the point that it has to be evolution, not revolution, given that you cannot provide a revolution in resource in the first 2 years of a Labour government. I mean, you accept that, right?
Where we've made commitments, we've set out the funding for that, and that can be put in place straight away. But we're going to go at pace on this. I want this change to come about, and I know that
But then you won't commit more resource.
The whole point.
You won't commit more resource. I asked you, and I made the point about what the Association of Head Teachers said. Schools need significant resource. You won't commit it.
Well, look, do we need more resource for our public services? Yes. Do we need to grow our economy to get to that place? Yes. That's why this mission and the mission for growing our economy go side by side.
So reform first, funding later?
Well, we need to do both at pace. These missions are intended to operate together. But do I want better resource public services? Yes, I do. Do I understand that we've got a damaged economy under this government? They've barely grown the economy for 13 years. They then had the kamikaze mini budget that did even more damage. We'll inherit that if we're privileged enough to go into power. But we have to be clear, what is it we're trying to achieve? Because then we'll have to make difficult decisions. Yeah. And the missions are intended to be a way of saying, that is what matters most to me, that's what drives me. We'll put our resource there, and we may not be able to do other things.
You talk about a class ceiling. You want to get state schools to the same level as private schools. By when?
Well, as soon as we can. And that's
first term of a Labour government, takes 2 Labour governments, takes a generation. By when?
This is intended to set out what I would hope to have achieved in 5 years of a Labour government, maybe a little bit more. We're in a bad situation, a bad starting situation. But to go back to where you started, I want state schools to be just as good as private schools. I want parents to feel that it doesn't matter anymore whether you send your children to state or private school, because the quality of education is as good in both places. And to give children in state schools the same opportunities as they have in private schools.
The gap between state school funding and private school funding, this is an IFS document up to the year 2021, a bit out of date. It's doubled in the past decade. It's from £3,500 to £3,100 to £6,500. You just can't close the gap, can you, in one term?
Well, look, I think we can firstly set out what we'll do in the immediate first step, which is to remove the tax break for public schools and use that money directly to support children and young people in our state schools. But it's not all about money. There's the reform issue here as well. When we're talking about the curriculum and the difference it would make for children and young people to be able to express themselves clearly with confidence in the school, in the workplace, that will make a massive difference to their lives. So yes, money is an issue. We will have to make tough decisions, but reform is also an important part of the argument.
I'm jumping in because I haven't got much time. In 2006, Gordon Brown committed to increase state school spending up to levels of private schools. That was a commitment. You might not be able to do that in the early years of a Labour government. Will you do it later? Is that an ambition of yours at least?
Look, it's always an ambition of a Labour government to make sure we've got the best possible education and to have properly funded public services.
My question was, would you commit to getting spending levels up to private school levels in a Labour government? You might not. That's the question.
We do need more funding. We will have to grow the economy. We're going to inherit a very badly damaged economy. What I've set out is what steps we're going to take now, how we're going to fund them, what we're going to do to grow the economy. And I would reflect back on the last Labour government. All Labour governments improve education standards, build schools, and that will be the ambition of the next Labour government, just as it was of the last Labour government.
Quickly to new teachers, you want to recruit 6,500, but retention is terrible. 1 in 5 teachers who qualified in 2020 have quit, according to government figures. Labour figures, more than a third of teachers who qualified in the last 11 years have quit. So will you give teachers the 6.5% pay rise recommended by the pay body? If you want to retain them, you need to pay them properly.
Well, look, if I was in government, I'd make sure the Education Secretary was in the room talking to the unions right now to resolve this dispute. But, you talk about retention of teachers quite rightly. What we want is a framework for progression to recognise their qualifications and also a retention payment for good teachers who stay in the classroom over the 2 years.
What teachers, I think, are hearing is that you won't commit to it. So you want to retain them, but you won't commit to giving them the pay rise that the independent body recommends. That's what they hear.
We don't know what the body has recommended yet.
Well,
we're in
6.5%.
We're in opposition, not government. The government needs to get around the table and resolve this issue. And I think most teachers, most parents would be pretty astonished to know that they're running out.
So teachers will be hearing that the leader of the Labour Party won't honour necessarily a pay recommendation.
I think teachers will be hearing from today, as will parents, that there is a core commitment from Labour to education if we come into power, just as there was last time.
There's another group of people might be feel let down by you, and that's students. You promised when you became party leader you'd scrap tuition fees. It was in 2 Labour manifestos. You've broken that promise.
Well, I think the tuition fees regime has to change. I don't think it's fair, and we intend to change it and come forward with our plans for doing so. But look, there are good Labour things which we will not be able to afford to do because of the damage this government has done to the economy. And that's why I've been clear in my missions by saying these are the priorities, these are the big changes that we need to see for our country, most important of which is growing the economy and lifting living standards across the country.
If it wasn't for the pandemic, would you reintroduce that policy, or you think it's dead?
Well, look, we need to look at the finances as we get closer to the election. There's probably, 2, maybe 3 fiscal events yet. We don't know what we're going to inherit. But, we will set out our plans. The current scheme is not right. We will set out our plans as we go forward.